at all that money, yeah, the money that they spend. Take another look now and take some time for hemp. I know cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. Oh, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rent. Well, right now it's time for hemp.
Thank you for taking time for hemp. I'm your host, Casper Leitch. On the program today, we are reaching across the border from America to the Canadian side with this wonderful program that we want to bring to you today. My joint host, Al Byrne, is also joining us on the big program. He is the official joint host of Time for Hemp. Hi, Al Byrne.
Hi, Casper Leitch.
And we also have on our program as part of our joint team. And don't forget, anytime you hear the word joint on the big broadcast, hit your bongs, your pipes, your vaporizers, and let everybody all around the world know that it is time for hemp. On the program, we also have on our joint team, Al Graham. Al is handling the controls and the devices to make certain that everything looks smooth and sounds groovy. And we're also being joined today by a joint friend of ours that Al Graham introduced me to 100 years ago when I first started getting activists in the cannabis movement. And that's Alison Myrden, one of the people in my life who I just adore. Alison, how you doing? It's time for hemp.
Hi, everybody.
How you doing, Alison? How you doing?
Fantastic. Every day of my life, I'm always great. Thanks for asking, Al.
And as always, I like to sit back and hit the pipe and enjoy the conversation. So I'm going to let my joint host, Al Byrne, kick off the questions. Al?
Beautiful.
Well, first, let me just say hello. We spoke informally earlier, but people know I've been around the issue of cannabis in some fashion for about 40 years. And I don't accuse Alison of being that old, but she sure put her time in. I know that. We discussed that we've never met, but in my travels in the cannabis world, I've heard of Alison and her accomplishments, her successes for a couple of decades anyway. So, it's really good you're here. But let me ask the puff question that I think will get us moving, which is, you are what you are now, but there was a first time that you ran into cannabis, and you used it or not. But could you put us back in time and say, yeah, I ran into cannabis, and then here's what happened. How about that for a start?
You bet, Al. And again, nice to meet you, my sweet friend. I actually was introduced to cannabis when I was a teenager. And when I was around 16 years old, I think it was then that I smoked my first cannabis cigarette. And the funniest thing was, as soon as I smoked it, I could walk better, I could talk better, and I had energy coming out of the wazoo. So bottom line, I knew then it was my medicine. So I started to pursue it when I was a teenager. And then when I became, I think it was around 28 years old, I got my first federal exemption or license.
Alison,
I got paperwork. Yes.
Can you include, like you mentioned, medicine? Can you include why you use this as medicine?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. A lot of your listeners, I apologize. I've done a few interviews and I'm just ready to roll. My problems that I deal with are health issues, and I battle primary progressive multiple sclerosis and the world's apparently worst pain known to medicine in my face and head called trigeminal neuralgia, or a nickname, Tick-Dollaroo, the suicide disease. Ooh. So because I was told that when I was young, I thought there's no way that, A, I'm going to leave this world on my own, but B, no matter what. And B, I wanted to find answers immediately. So getting back to Byrne, I ended up going the route of becoming a law enforcement officer. I actually went into corrections and I started working with young offenders because, like me as a young person, they were not listened to. So I decided I would give them a shoulder and I would listen to them as to why they were being arrested for trafficking and doing all these things with, illicit substances. And it turned out that, again, it was mostly glamour and money that was convincing the young people that they had to go that route. So again, I connected my law enforcement background with the fact that I needed and consumed cannabis as medicine and knew from a very young age, Al, that it was actually good medicine for me.
Well, I think that's one of the ways that I first met you as well, was the Law Enforcement Against Prohibition organization founded by Peter Chris. I'm not sure whatever happened to Peter.
He's still around.
Is he? Because
Yeah.
I tried to find him. I can't. Anyway, and I think you were the major representative in Canada for that organization for the longest time, weren't you?
I was. There was a gentleman named John Gator who was a Parks and Recreations law enforcement officer for the Niagara Falls area. And he worked around the falls a lot, but he didn't really come out publicly a lot in the media. So I, again, tended to do a lot of media back when, 100 years ago. And because of that, I became really vocal all around the world. So.
Yeah, I actually thought you were a lawyer. You were so mouthy.
Well,
how I wanted to be.
That's that is just the passion in you, driving you to get the word out and tell everybody. Just like other patients that find the benefits in cannabis, like as you described in the beginning there. When you're a young teenager and the first time you consumed it, things became better for you.
But I just knew because, again, I'd had so many pills already. My history was 32 pills a day, 2,000 milligrams of morphine every day, heroin, and then cocaine. And at the same time, I was getting raw opium from a doctor sent to me from Montreal here in Canada every single month. Like I had everything I was consuming under the sun.
Now, the cocaine and the heroin and stuff, you had a Section 56?
No, actually, I just literally, I was working with a doctor in Canada here from Burlington, Ontario, who is, I guess, a really known pain specialist, but also known because he was so different with his administration of substances. So in the substances he was involved in, like heroin and cocaine, nobody else at the time would touch them. And I would go to the hospital 3 times a week, laying on a gurney, and I'd have a big, huge, and like tower of cocaine shoved up my nose while I was laying down to the nerve center at the top of my nose so that I could get some relief because it was 24 hours a day. So, and look at me now.
Well, Alison, one of the federal patients that I worked with at Patients at a Time way back when, Barbara Douglas, she's deceased now, but she got her federal dose of cannabis every month for multiple sclerosis. She had some pain, but I don't think anything like you're describing. But what I did see was as soon as she started using cannabis on a daily basis, her spasticity decreased considerably right away. She actually, in a reasonably short period of time, went from her wheelchair to a cane, to no cane. In fact, I tell the story. I visited her at the beginning of this process, and I came back roughly a year later. She lived right on a lake, Stormont Lake, Iowa, and a beautiful home. And just to be dramatic, to let me know that she was doing a lot better, before I left to hit the road, she got on a jet ski and skied around the lake.
Oh, wow.
So, and that was using U.S. government, what I will call swag, inferior product. Did the cannabis help you in that way at all, or a lot?
You know what, Al? I actually found out when I was young. Pardon me, I just ate a gummy. I found out when I was young that I was learning a lot about cannabis as medicine through a doctor in the US named Dr. Ethan Russo.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Dr. Russo was specializing in migraines, cannabis as medicine, multiple sclerosis, and what I suffer from, trigeminal neuralgia. So Gary contacted him decades ago, found him in a chat room in London, in England, and begged him to help me because I was having such a bad night then. So this doctor, Dr. Russo, is an angel, ended up inviting me to the first cannabis conference in Canada. In the year was 1999, but I think the published papers are coming from 2004 on. But when we went in 1999, I took my mom and we stayed at a bed and breakfast close by the facility because we couldn't afford a hotel at all. Again, I have no money. And I ended up going to this conference with my mother. My mother sat beside me, who sat beside Raphael Mechalom, as he had his arm around her the entire weekend at every meal. Couldn't get enough of talking to my mother about my situation. So Raphael told me, Rafi promised me that not only would cannabis help me, but that there would be answers that I would be amazed to see. So what I had done then was I'd gone home and I'd looked up more on GW Pharmaceuticals, a big pharmaceutical company from England at the time. And I found a study when I looked up multiple sclerosis. I found a study that I printed out that day. And the line in the study that I was most impressed with and most concerned about, and took to my doctors, my members of parliament, everybody under the sun, said exactly, cannabis will halt the progression of MS. So from that day on, I thought, I found my medicine. I went back the next day, gone. Nowhere to be found on the internet. And to this day, it's still not there, but I have it. So
Well,
again,
I know when I did research on you, I discovered you're rather ornery and you're rather vocal. You were one of the very few nationally known cannabis activists in Canada, and so you were hanging out with the notorious people like Mark Emery and Jody Emery and all those, Michelle Rady, all those pot smokers and the world who were just taking Canada to hell in a handbasket, and you wouldn't shut up about it.
if I can just drop a little note in here, Michelle Rainey, God rest her soul, she left us a few years ago. She actually was one of the ones who helped me get to that big medical cannabis conference I was just telling about, where I met Raphael Mechalom. Dr. Ethan Russo had invited me, I had invited my mom. I was the only lay person there, but the tie-in is that Michelle, I guess, told me that she was following my work at that time and was more than happy to help me out. So before I knew it, within a day or two, I had 10 $100 bills in an envelope with red lipstick marks everywhere on it. I guess it had come from Mark Emery, she said, and they wished me well.
But you didn't seem apprehensive about talking to the press and talking to anybody about the need to use medical cannabis at a time when if you just said the word marijuana out loud, people shunned you and put you into a camp.
You bet. But I also had a really good lawyer, Casper. I had Professor Alan Young, who was standing behind me. I've always had lawyers every step of the way who've had
that does help.
And Alan actually was one of the reasons that I got a lot of the media that I did. Because he actually reached out to everybody and, like you said, hey, there's a patient here who's speaking. I guess it was unusual. I didn't know that. I didn't know that at all. I thought everybody did it.
Well, that's the thing, eh? Speaking up, sharing the stories, it helps to educate the public, lets people know who, this is going on, and look, basically look who we are here now, a decade or more later, right?
Always. You know what? I couldn't have done it without all of you and everybody else beside us, because as one, we are a force to be reckoned with.
Oh yes, yeah. The bigger it makes our voices louder. There's no doubt about that.
Betcha.
Yeah. Now your activity and advocacy and stuff like that. You're also involved in the Toronto Global Marijuana March
Yeah.
when it first got started.
We brought it to Toronto, actually. There were 5 of us who originally decided, I think it was in the 90s again, 1999 it might have been.
Yeah, exactly.
I was going to say, and there was a Compassion Club owner named Neve, a Compassion Club owner named Dom, Stephen Bacon, who is another one of the first licensed patient. I think he is in the category first.
On the first group.
And Gary and myself, and I was in my electric wheelchair with a flag, and all I wanted to do was legalize cannabis. So we decided we were going to bring the Global Marijuana March to Toronto and give them a thing or two to talk about.
Yeah, and it's still going today.
Well, funny enough, Al, the first year, like I said, there were the 5 of us marching around the major city streets of Toronto, screaming, booming off the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
We had a great time. Next year, I heard there were over 20,000, but I've heard as many as 50,000
Yeah.
who joined us. That was totally cool.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I like to see. I'm a head cheerleader from when I was young. Sorry, Al. And all I want to do is make sure everybody screams the same as we do.
Oh yeah, it was all part of helping get to legalization, and the programs for the patients and all that, because of the fact that people were speaking up.
Exactly.
Alison, when you were doing this process in Canada, what were you running into? I mean, what was the opposition saying back? Were they just political? Was it religious, political, stupidity? What was it?
I think a bit of all of the above, Al, truly, but it was a big political move for us at the time because the government was not willing to budge at all. And we felt as patients, and I knew, because again, I'm a retired corrections officer, I know my rights. And I knew that one of the rights here in Canada was to use anything licit or illicit to feel better. And I couldn't find anything licit, which is legal. So I went illicit, which is illegal, and I got my answers there.
Yeah, I just ran into stupidity. With my government, they're just nothing but dumb as stones. I was just wondering.
Now, as far as like when you first got, like you said, you were one of the first people to get your medical license for cannabis. Before then, what was the process? Like, I know what it is, but what was the process that patients would have had to follow at that time?
That's a good question. Now, before there was a program in Canada, people like me really suffered because we were trying to teach the government that cannabis was good medicine and they weren't the least bit interested in listening. So what I did again was I started to find lawyers. That's what started my lawyers trail. I started to find lawyers who would help me pro bono for free, whether it just was to give me an answer for a question or to actually lead me in a direction that I wanted to go and tell me what the consequences would be, all those sorts of things. So when I was young, again, leading into that and starting with the lawyers, I felt that that was probably the way for me to go. So I continued on that way, Al. And so much so that every step of the way, I've used a lawyer. I've told the lawyer. I've been involved with a lawyer. I've done everything with the lawyers. And that's how I do it. So for me, again, it was the long, path trying to get that, confidence, as well as, make sure that they understood my fight. Because again, in the beginning, a lot of the lawyers just thought I was trying to legalize and regulate every drug just so I could use it. Like, no, I'm already using it. I don't need you for that.
So what keeps you in the movement? What keeps you motivated to go out and continue to speak about this? I mean, it seems like it's been a long, enduring war on drugs, to say the least. And sometimes you think that the whole country is moving forward on the concept of legalizing it for medication, and then 3 or 4 months will go by and somebody in Parliament or in Congress will do something stupid and set everything back 5 years. So
yeah,
you're having that problem now in Canada. I mean, it looks like things are rolling back in some ways.
Al, you would know better, but I'll tell you, as a patient, at Casper, I was one of the first 20 patients in Canada in 1994.
Yep.
And now here I am, 2024. I'm old. And all of a sudden, again, I've been under the program for about 5 years. So I can't even get into the program because A, my amount is too much, and B, how am I going to afford it?
No, that's what I mean. It seems like it's gone backwards in the attempt to help those who need it.
Yes.
Yeah, because affordability.
And it seems like it's been a deliberate attempt to make that happen.
I do agree. Our fight is not over. When you asked me if my fight was going to continue, it is continuing for those very reasons, because people are suffering. People are not getting what they're asking for. And as a country, I'm wearing a shirt that says the power of the people is greater than the people in power. I wish people would start to listen.
I do too. Yeah, I think they know it just takes a while. A long time ago, I ran into a PhD student that was working in a hospital, and she had social histories or something was her PhD, and she was very interested. This was 30 years ago, about what I was trying to do with cannabis and all that shit. And she said, well, good luck, sir, because it takes 100 years for a culture to change its ways.
That time.
So
I've lived that long. How come it hasn't changed?
You got to hang in there. You got to hang in there, because 100 years isn't for another 10 years. So I'm just saying, be patient. Be patient.
Yeah. Well, I like to come back 100 years after legalization to see how it's changed.
Yeah.
Now, Alison, you know how they always say, in order to make change, you have to get involved in things in order to do so. I would say you took that right to heart back in the early 2000s when you actually ran for political office.
Excuse me. Actually, I was a little upset that I was 40 years old, and I thought, not much is being done here, Casper. Getting back to what you were saying, they move at the pace of a glacier, the courts. So when I ran for office, I decided I was going to put cannabis on my platform, and became the first person in the world, which I did not know at the time, to do that. So I had international media from around the world interviewing me about running for political office with cannabis on my platform. And what I was trying to do was legalize and regulate the plant as not only as medicine, but for everybody then. And we more than doubled the votes that year for the New Democratic Party of Canada federally, because people wanted change then.
Yeah, and what I ran into those are kind of the years was I was with running Normal. And, I back then, I disagreed with that, obviously, because Normal was a legalization outfit, always wanted to be, still is. And when I got there, I was I took over the reins of the place, ran it for a few years. And I was certainly interested in legalization, but I was also interested in the medical aspects of it for personal reasons. And I had met and admired Jack Herr and listened to his arguments about hemp. So anyway, from a military standpoint of view, which was my background, I decided when Norma was there that we'd be better off having a three-pronged attack, if you will, on the government. They just didn't have to fight back on legalization. Now they were going to have to debate about hemp as a product and hemp as a medicine. So, for me, strategically, even tactically, it was a good thing to do. So to get to your point, that meant for me a total disentanglement of either hemp and medicine or both from legalization. So back what you were talking about, see, I would have counseled you then. One or the other. One or the other. And I would still say to advocates the same thing. Pick your
cannabis or hemp.
And do it with passion, but do not start to intermingle.
Yeah,
you agree with me now, Alison?
100%, Al.
Well, good. Yeah, I think it's important to both our countries that we understand there's three issues here at a minimum.
Yes.
Well, yeah, and then there's this thing called freedom, which we won't even have to,
Freedom? I have to go to Wikipedia to look that word up. Just a minute.
Well, you could ask other people. I know Aaron Kay and I have been talking about that a lot, and I'm sure you gentlemen know him, the yippee pie thrower. He actually, again, is somebody who's huge on freedom. Hi, Aaron. The bottom line, again, what I was going to say to you, Al, is that obviously all of these things are important. So when people actually get out there and fight, things like political issues are part of the battle, but they're not the whole battle. People have to understand that, again, there's so many uses with cannabis and hemp, which are two completely different plants. Canada right now is trying to meld the cannabis consumers who are social or recreational in with people who like us who are patients. And what they're trying to do is push the patients into the open cannabis market here in Canada. And we are fighting it every step of the way, Al, because they, for one, social consumers do not use nearly as much or consume nearly as much cannabis as people like me who consume it 24 hours a day. So again, and affordability is a huge factor for patients in Canada with cannabis. Now, I can't even imagine what it would be like if they got rid of it.
We find that frustrating here in America. Like I said, I'm 100, so I'm on Medicare and Medicaid and everything else, and the government can give. But I can't turn into my insurance claim my cannabis money. I spend this much money on. I need an ounce a month or an ounce a day. Thank you. And I want my Medicare to cover it, but no. But it'll cover these medicines that they give you to kill you when you're going through cancer and chemotherapy. They'll pay for that, but they sure heck won't pay for something that really, is good for you. So it is frustrating.
Is that fair, though? Is that fair? What we're fighting for in Canada is choice, Casper. This is what it boils down to, is that patients deserve choice. If you want pills, have pills. If you want to go to the pharmacy and pick up your medicine, go right ahead. If you want to go your own, you should not be interfered with.
Well, Alison, wait a minute. Yes. I get that part of it. I got a question.
You bet.
As far as cannabis goes, are you saying that the government policy in Canada is forcing patients into the commercial market? Mm-hmm. Did I get that right?
Pretty much, actually. They're not giving us the choice, Al.
Some doctors are actually saying, well, why should I sign a license for 10 grams when you can go to the store and buy 30 every day?
Exactly.
The federal government also put out a review questionnaire on cannabis legalization. And one of the questions, question 5.2, actually asked, would the storefronts be a substitute for the medical cannabis program?
Well, let me ask this question too, that in Canada, if that guy writes a prescription, who pays for that?
We
You
do.
do. So it doesn't matter where you go, you end up paying the bill. That's what you're
I
saying.
don't believe it. It's the only medication in Canada that I can find that doesn't have a DIN number, a drug identification number. It's called a
Right,
DIN.
right.
No,
Well, that's because it's a plant, see.
Exactly.
They don't do that to plants.
You're
there
right.
are
I'm gonna take this one more step farther. The medical is forcing you to go into the commercial. Here, as well, on top of that, when we go into the commercial, I had some friends. I live in Indiana. I had some friends who were going to Illinois, where it is legal to purchase. So I called up to Illinois and I asked how much an ounce was, and they said $225. And I said, I can get it $125 on the black market. And they said, yes, we know. But because of the taxes that we have to pay to the state and all the license fees that we have to cover, the only way that we can afford to stay open and do business is to charge those prices. So we do understand that the black market is beating us. So the medical pushes you into the commercial, and the commercial is still pushing you into the black market.
So true, Casper. And this is the fight I've had for decades with LEAP, law enforcement against prohibition. I spoke for them for 12 years. They're based in the United States. And bottom line, we all agreed that that was absolutely ridiculous to make patients go to the street for our medicine. So what we decided then was that nobody, no patient whatsoever, and nobody should be on the street for their product, for their whatever it is they're buying. So we needed to obviously eliminate the street market yesterday.
Exactly.
It exactly was fought for full legalization and regulation of every single substance in this world. The harder and the stronger the substance, the more it had to be legalized and regulated, taken away from the street, taken away from our children, and taken out of the hands of the criminal element once and for all.
Well, I think there's still pockets of Canada, I might be wrong, that also have it illegal in such a sense that here in the States, again, I'm living in Indiana.
Yes.
All the way around me, Michigan, Illinois, Kentucky, and Ohio all have it legal for recreational and medicine. Indiana does not.
That is so wrong.
I tell people, like, when it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon in New York, it is noon in LA, it's 1955 in Indiana. Yeah. And so because of that, I've got friends who are my age who have a lot of physical ailments. I have a friend who's missing a leg. I have another friend who's got heart problems. I have another friend who's dealing with all kinds of, and they need this to get through their day.
Right.
But the whole state says that even as a senior citizen who is crippled up, even though you need medical cannabis, if you're caught with us, they're going to put you in jail.
Well, let me just say, Indiana, if I can, there's a wonderful vet there. If any vet is listening and you're in Indiana, there's a guy named Jeff Staker, Staker. You can find him on the internet. It's something like Indiana Vets for Medical Cannabis. Jeff Staker, if you are in that area, you want to help him. The other thing I'll say about Indiana is I lived there for 4 years as a student at Notre Dame, and Notre Dame has a huge influence in that state, as you might think. And the Pope, the Catholic Pope, somebody asked him a couple of years ago what he thought about medical cannabis. The Pope said, if it helps people, they should have it. That's pretty simple.
Yep.
And Notre Dame has not taken the Pope's advice. If Notre Dame, my alma mater, would get off their ass and do the right thing for people and patients, they would talk to Indiana and say that if the Pope's for it and Notre Dame's for it, you need to be for it. So that's my little diatribe about Indiana. I'm sorry that you're there, Casper. I know you have a comfortable life and all those things. And you are obviously, your neighboring states is surrounded by good, nice, considerate, thinking of their sick and ill people, and you happen to be right there in the middle of Devil's Land. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. Hug your dog. Hug your dog.
My dog's doing groovy. Thank you for asking.
We see your dog.
I'm her pet. She owns me.
She's got you well trained, does she?
I wasn't gonna love her. I was just gonna like her. After my last dog died before I got her, I sat around the house like my grandfather did and just stared out a window for like months. I just sat around and was just lost.
Yeah.
And I decided I wasn't ever going to allow myself to get that wrapped up in an animal again. And I would never love that deeply. But I also figured since I had this big room in my house and I was still alive, I could bring one home and give it, food, and shelter, be nice to it.
Love.
And about the third week, she stole my heart. The bitch ain't gave it back. So
that's the way we are, honey. That's the way we are.
But I wasn't gonna love her. I was just gonna like her, just be friends with her. That's okay. You can hang out.
You didn't have a chance.
Yeah, you're growing on me. All right. Now, you might have seen there. I just flashed your website up there. I'm using a different browser today, and I see that it puts things directly to the screen. So, this is where basically people go to your website. You want to tell us about it? What your website address is?
Sure. Actually, my website is my name, but that's my first website in the world. Again, Casper, about 100 years ago, you might remember. And it's called the Medical Marijuana Mission. But it's a link on my new website.
No.
I don't even know, probably the early 2000s. I've had a website, my name, AlisonMyrden.ca, AlisonMyrden.ca. And I'm not just on the internet, I'm everywhere.
You haven't shut up since you started talking about this damn plant.
Alison, on a fashion note, I have a friend, a vet in Louisiana named Tony Landry, and he's a great guy, and he's a cannabis advocate. He's done more for Louisiana than anybody else probably, but he shows up wearing hats, different hats. And I kid him about it a lot. So I was just wondering, are you a hat lady? Do you show up at different places with different hats?
I am. Actually, I have, again, probably at the end, close to 1,000 hats, I'm sure. No, but I have probably close to 30 or 40 different hats. I've been wearing them since I've been in my teens. So whatever's in style, I just snap it on my head and off I go.
I probably should wear one, to cover the shine.
For me, it's to cover the hole. I don't want anything to escape.
I went ugly early and got it over with and just moved on to other things.
You're beautiful. All you got to do is put a little wax on her and you're off to running.
How do I do now, Alison, to get the right website up there?
Beautiful. Al Graham, I don't know where I would have been without you, my friend. AlisonMyrden.com. And that's my big fluffy guy. 36 years he's been in my life hanging out with me. Gary Leitch. Kind of cute.
Now I see here.
So what's next? So what's next for Alison Myrden? Are you hanging out every day at the smoke shop, just getting high and watching cartoons, or what?
No, my darling, I've never really been like that. I work every day on the internet because all around the world, there's somebody who needs help somewhere. Actually, right now I'm working with a fellow from the Philippines, a Canadian, who's just written a book. So I'm hoping to help him. He's a traumatic brain injury patient who uses psychedelics.
Wow. You
Mhm.
think you'll ever slow down?
No, I don't think so. I've always been really busy. Like I said, when I was young, I don't think I ever stopped. I had my first job teaching guitar at 16 and thought I was going to be a rock star and went down that path for a while. Had a recording contract at 18 and then got my tonsils out and everything was over when I got diagnosed with MS in my 20s. So I live vicariously through my rock star friends. And I decided to again go into corrections. And when that didn't turn out, Casper, I went down the road of being an activist.
Well, I know you are a conundrum because not only are you a former police officer, you know, we're all afraid of the police, right? But you're also a former politician. And in spite of that, I've always liked you. And I've told you that, right?
Thank you.
But you made it clear, too, that it wasn't always on the agenda of the police person to go after the cannabis user.
No.
You were quick to point out, as well as many members of the LEAP organization, that many members of the police departments all around, not just Canada and America, but the world, consider these cannabis laws nonsensical and a waste of their life, right?
They most certainly are. As you know, Casper, again, I've been fighting this well over 30 years. I was actually fighting it before I actually became a member of LEAP or speaker for LEAP. And that started again, I think, in 1995 or 1994, something like that. I don't even remember now. It's been so 2004, pardon me. And again, lasted for 12 years with, LEAP. So, but before then, I was already doing a lot of vocalization about drug law reform in Canada. Everywhere I could go, I was speaking about it. So it wasn't until 2000 that the media even picked me up in Canada. So, and then from there, I've just been going nonstop.
So whatever happened to LEAP, I've seen that it's kind of online. They seem to be doing some of the same things. Peter Chris, the guy who founded it's no longer part of it. Do you know what is up with LEAP? Is it still a good organization? Is it stagnant? What?
Yeah, a few of us left LEAP a number of years ago because their mandate changed, Casper. And I think this is my opinion. I believe that a lot of the officers were just a little frightened to speak out the way some of us did in the beginning. So Jack Cole, Peter Chris, myself, very vocal people in LEAP. I mean that when you think LEAP, we're usually the three people that you think of because we're the ones who've been speaking out the most. So ultimately, again, when the three of us left, again, Jack and Peter being two of the original founding members, LEAP had to change. They had to realize that they needed to go down again a different road. They already were pursuing that road, more corporate sort of belief in legalization at the time, which was not, again, what I was about. And I was the first one to leave, I believe. And then Peter and Jack, we all left around the same time. I don't even remember.
Right.
But as soon as LEAP changed their mandate, we were gone. There was no point in us staying around. They have a great mandate. Please don't get me wrong, but it's not something that I fight for.
Right.
So, again, I think they're kind of going down the route now that people like me have always been going down. But, again, it's difficult when you have a corporate group of law enforcement officers, some of whom are not retired. So, and that's always been the case with LEAP. Some of them have been active duty police officers and law enforcement officers when I was with LEAP in 2004. So again, we have a mix of everything and it just wasn't sitting well, our message that Peter and myself and Jack were already spreading. So.
Well, anybody got any closing questions for our guests today?
So what now we've fought for legalization. We fought for, the medical access. As we know, the numbers are going down, the patients growing and stuff like that. And the push towards the commercial businesses for the patients. Do you see down the road, like I know the court challenges have said there's always going to be a medical program or has to be a program. But do you see that that's just maybe just it'll just dwindle off in the end? And what do you see for cannabis legalization down the road?
Already the program, I was actually very surprised when I pulled up the numbers the other day in Canada. There are just around 300,000 patients in Canada. And I was one of the first 20 in 1994. And I honestly thought by now there would be a lot more than just, again, 300,000 people. So it ended up, that's just a rough number.
Yeah.
But I'm just you that we fought, Al, all of us fought so hard for this to be medicine here in Canada. I honestly thought it would take off a lot faster and be a lot bigger than it is. So we still have a fight in our hands. I'm still talking about it every chance I get. Again, I was just on Montel Williams' podcast, Let's Be Blunt, just recently, and we were talking about that exact issue, that we have to keep it out there. We have to keep talking about it because people don't really, it's there one day and then they forget about it. So somebody like me who's repetitive constantly brings these issues up over and over and over and over and over again. And I think that's, again, what's driving it in is people who are finally repeating these messages continuously, whether it be for days or weeks or hours, whatever it is.
And now, to those people who say, well, cannabis is legalized, why do you need to protest? Why do you need to keep fighting the government? What do you say to them?
I say it's not legal everywhere in the world, and that's our fight, everybody. We're all in this together, and it's a global issue. It always has been. If that were the case, I would have fought for just little old me in Burlington, Ontario, Canada. Right?
Yeah, but right now, guys, there's something north of 27, 28 countries in the world that have cannabis as part of their pharmacopoeia.
Yes.
Meaning to people it's medically available in that country. And, that's a lot of people. It's not that the knowledge isn't there, the science isn't there, even the experience isn't there. It's just the United States government has this, what I call a hubristic attitude. If it isn't American, it ain't worth shit. Which in this case is a fallacy on wheels. But just again to Canada, as I understand it, and I'm not up on this, but for a few months ago, I believe that Canadian veterans approved for cannabis use still are getting their daily or their weekly cannabis doses delivered to their homes. If that's correct, what I would suggest is maybe the activists up there should at least start to get the conversation going, advocate for that type of service to also be extended to their first responders, to EMTs, police officers, firefighters, guys that fight firefighters out in the woods, those kind of people who are in harm's way. It might be, I'm just suggesting, a way to reinvite the conversation about who should get it and why. Just a suggestion.
Well, and then the other aspect of it, may I interject here, is there are states here in America that say, oh, yeah, well, it's legal medically and it's legal recreationally. And that's really nice. But how legal medically is it? We talked earlier about how I can't file a claim with Medicare to have it covered. I can't have a doctor give it to me if I'm in a hospital so I can smoke it in my room to help the pain that I'm dealing with instead of taking this narcotic they want to shove in my arm. I'm not allowed to utilize this particular medication in public because they treat it like liquor, but it's a medication, right? If I need an insulin, I can take insulin in public. If I needed an aspirin, I can take an aspirin in public, but I can't take, So that's the other aspect of it being complete. We're not done with the fight. Okay. So yeah, it's legal, but how legal
Well, actually, Casper, if I may, and I was going to, because Canada seems to me to going the other way. Right now, down in the United States, depending on state law, you can buy cannabis legally, medically, or both. Federal law is prohibited, right? You can't have it. Bang.
Right.
So right now in the United States, what the Congress is considering, because the DEA, the cops have said it's a good idea, not the medical people, the cops, that the cops say that physicians in the United States will be able to prescribe cannabis now because they're going to put it in Schedule 3, which in the United States means a physician, a nurse practitioner, a veterinarian can prescribe cannabis for off-the-record use. In other words, even if they say that cannabis is put in Schedule 3 for neurological reasons, a doctor can come along and write it for nausea. So they put it in Schedule 3 in the United States. This is why I say it's the opposite, I think, of what Canada's doing. Because what this is going to do, this could close up dispensaries here in the United States.
What?
Because if you write a prescription in the United States, the people that fill that prescription are pharmacists. Okay, now there's all of that's very, very regulated. So now you got an MD, he charges you money, he gives you a prescription, you go to the pharmacist, not the dispensary, to get that prescription filled. Now that takes away a lot of objections that Casper was just talking about. And it does another thing, it makes it legal federally. So from a veteran point of view, again, the VA down here won't help a veteran with using cannabis in the United States in a non-legal state. Well, as soon as the federal government says it's Schedule 3, everything in the VA and the health system for our vets becomes equal. It is not equal now. So for me, that's a good thing.
It is.
Bad thing, pharmacies, possibly even worse thing, closing down dispensaries. And then we get to the cost aspect. And well, if we're closing down the dispensaries because everybody's got to go to a pharmacy, who the hell can afford anything anyway? I think no matter what these countries do, and yours or mine, it's just none of it makes sense. It just does not make sense.
Here,
and I just want to say to the audience, I don't need to preach to Casper especially. When you see these kind of arguments going on, they're going to put it in Schedule 3. They're going to do this. That's if you think it's a drug. That's if you think drug, okay? If you think what's going on, it's a plant. It's a friggin' plant. And just like Alan says, I've never seen one of these retail checkout things on. Well, you never will. It's a plant. So the logical thing is to get the hell out of the way, turn it over to the Department of Agriculture, U.S. or Canada, treat it as a plant, and then they can also regulate it as a medicine. As a serious patient, I would want, as an option, we're talking options, I want to go to a pharmacy and get something that's been approved and packaged correctly and stamped. And if I've got the insurance, that's what I want. But on the other hand, I also want to grow it in my backyard.
Exactly.
So
I think it should be treated like grapes, where with grape you can make liquor out of it. So if you're making something like that out of cannabis,
that's what I'm saying.
You can make jelly out of it. You can make jelly out of it, or eat it right off the vine, and that's like for 3 cents, or no regulation for that.
It's a plant. So I would recommend advocates to always say that when the people they're talking to keep referring to cannabis as a drug. It's not a drug. But to get that change of cognitive thought is you got to just slam them with it.
You're right.
Well, and that's why I'm always careful to call it a medicine. I don't ever call it a drug, because you're right. It's not. It's an herb. It's a medicine. When it's used for medicine, it can be used for recreation. It can also be used to cook with, just like grapes, right?
And so.
And the sales on the USS Constitution, you have endless uses for the cannabis plant. And by the way, what we're talking is, another thing that I'm going to try and bring somebody on in the future is talking about nutrition.
Oh yeah,
The nutritional value of this plant is extraordinary, especially the seed oil. Just incredible what it can do for the human body. So
I want to just take
a lot of good stuff there.
I just want to take you back to your comments about the patients and being able to go to the store and pick up their cannabis and whatever cannabis they want. Our medical program does not allow patients to do that. Our medical program only allows for mail order. So a patient who wants to order their cannabis have to do it by online, and that company, which is the licensed producer, will mail the cannabis to the patient.
I didn't even know that.
A patient cannot walk into the store and fill out a prescription for cannabis. There's actually only one, maybe two. I only know of one store, and that's in Ottawa. And that's that's in Ottawa. That's the only store. Other than that, all our stores in Canada are recreational.
Like Al just said.
Yeah. So it almost you were talking about that you were worried that the future could get to the point of where the stores will be closed because the patients are going to get their cannabis in the mail. And that's exactly what is happening and has been happening here in Canada since day one.
I think that's a good thing, frankly.
You like that, eh? A lot of
I have no problem with getting it delivered to my house. Bad weather, I got one leg, whatever it is, they bring it to my house. I think it's a good thing.
Why can't we have both?
Why can't you have both?
Exactly.
Well, instead of having Amazon Prime, we'll have Cannabis Prime.
My nickname from Gary is Prime. So
now, at one time you were able to grow personal, like 6 plants in your own backyard. Is it still that way in Canada?
We grow 4.
4.
All
right.
Well, that's pretty nice because they don't define what a plant is, do they? They just say a plant. It could be 30 feet high, right?
There are a couple caveats to that.
Oh.
If you live in, like for example, if you're in BC, the plants cannot be grown where they can be seen. So, like growing them on a balcony. There was a fellow who got arrested because he had 4 plants or 3 plants growing in a garden during a garden show, and the plants weren't even part of the garden tour. And also the province of Quebec, the Supreme Court of Canada, has agreed that the province of Quebec can prevent their residents from growing 4 plants.
That is absolutely egregious of our government.
It is. Now, Manitoba had a law like that, but they have a new government that has gone ahead and changed that law. So in Manitoba, they will be able to grow. But in Quebec, no.
Well, that's not unlike what's going on down here with some of our states.
Correct. Yeah. No, I follow a lot of your news, and some of it gets me upset, I guess. I'll tell you. When you hear about the parties blocking the rescheduling of cannabis.
Yes.
You sigh.
But you find out why, though. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly. We want to know details. Deets matter.
Steve. All right. Casper, over to you, buddy.
Well, Alison, it has been wonderful to see you again after all this time. As you know, I haven't been doing a whole lot since 2017, so I haven't been avoiding you. I've been avoiding the world and taking time for rest, and I've been enjoying that. And it's nice to have you as one of our first guests as we do the reboot for the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. So thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you. I love you, my sweet friend, and always have.
Yeah,
and I don't know Al Graham, I want to thank you for doing all the legwork, hard work, and technical work to make this show a fabulous presentation. It is because of Al's knowledge and ability and niceness to join us that we are able to have a highly tech program on this highly discussed topic. And I also want to thank Al Byrne for being our joint host in-house. Al Byrne, you rock. Thank you for being part of the team. We just love you here. And I also want to thank everybody out there who is tuning in. As you know, we are starting again If you tune in to us on BitChute or on Rumble, you'll see that I put up a foundation of videos that will help introduce you to some of the things that we've done here in the past. And if you like what we're doing, please hit the like and subscribe button and let all your friends know about what we're doing here, so that when we get up in the morning and take the world to task, we want to let everybody know how important it is to take time for hemp.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spent. Take another look and spend some time for him. Don't cut trees